Today, we're going to talk about how nuns lived in the Middle Ages. What had to be sacrificed to get into a nunnery? Is it true that the nuns were watched by the daughter of the famous William the Conqueror? And how entertained nuns to get rid of monotony and even break some rules? Be sure to watch the video to the very end to have a full picture of the life of a medieval nun. Some of the first women's monasteries appeared in Western Europe. Mentions of such buildings date back to the 4th century AD. Women who worshipped God and aspired to a moderate ascetic life just awaited their fate in monasteries. However, not every representative of the female sex could withstand the test before being ordained as a nun. Perhaps some of you think that devoting your life to worship is a fairly simple endeavor, accompanied by no weighty obstacles. Alas, but the female part of the population of medieval Europe had to go through several trials, because these rules were formed around the beginning of the 6th century and applied to all applicants. First, a donation to the monastery. Even in those days, one had to invest financially to prove one's commitment to helping others. Not every girl or woman could afford it, especially from a poor or low-income family, but ladies from the upper classes could afford it. Second, in order to start a new life, a woman had to give up many things. For example, to adhere to a strict daily schedule, to work for free, and to give up material possessions. This is a psychological ordeal that affected many people. Thirdly, there were age restrictions. Girls under 6 years of age and elderly women were not accepted as nuns. In addition, infirm and incapacitated people were not welcome in monasticism. Therefore, such female representatives were also not taken to the sacred service. The female part of the population did not simply wish to connect their lives with a new position. Mostly nuns became nuns for several reasons. Inability or unwillingness to marry, being punished by others for slander and propaganda that went against public opinion and moral principles, harsh life circumstances. This woman, the abbess of a nunnery, was responsible for the administration and general order. This position was considered quite prestigious in the Middle Ages. But to take the place of abbess, it was necessary to have wide connections. That is why she became a lady from noble and royal families. For example, history knows how one of the abbesses became the daughter of King William the Conqueror. Prioresses were the positions of women who reported directly to the abbess. In essence, they were the right hand of the abbess. The prioress was in charge of the household and also prepared food for all the members of the convent. He kept an eye on the women so that they would not violate the order and behave with dignity in the sacred place. Only it was not always possible. A little later, we will tell you how the nuns had fun and what they could afford. Here, we come to a key moment in the life of a medieval nun. Let's finally talk about what a day was like in the eyes of women of such a position, and what nuns did in the convent. So, the whole day consisted of 3 main activities: prayer, physical labor, and reading religious texts. This went on day after day, which once again proves one thing: strictness and monotony are the key rules for a medieval nun. As for prayer, girls and women prayed 7 times a day, and the very first prayer began before sunrise at a.m. And in the morning, they prayed at a.m. It was also allowed to sleep between night and early morning. Physical labor for the nuns was an integral part and became the main activity. This included working on farmland, knitting, and even copying books. Therefore, many had to be in the role of illustrators. The total duration of physical labor for nuns was from 5 to 6 hours. Although the girls and women worked for free, they had all the essentials: natural food and a roof over their heads. You are likely to ask, what about educational classes? Yes, the female part of the monastery was taught to read and write. The basics of literacy were indeed taught, and from different ages. reading religious texts in women's monasteries of the Middle Ages. The duration of this activity was not less than 2 hours every day. Can you imagine that nuns dressed exclusively into colors, black and white clothing? These were the shades that identified the main essence in the sacred service and signaled chastity, order, and obedience. Regarding eating and sleeping, attention should also be paid. Bread, meat, vegetables, and milk were obligatory on the tables of women's monasteries. Special attention was paid to products of protein origin, because nuns worked not only mentally, but also physically. As in most cases, meals consisted of breakfast, a solid lunch, and dinner. If family and friends brought treats to the monasteries, which was encouraged, the nuns shared them with everyone. But the nuns slept in common rooms with other girls and women, and instead of mattresses, straw was used in the beds. As we promised, let's talk about how nuns violated prohibitions in women's monasteries. The reason for such actions is that girls and women often grew tired of the prohibitions and restrictions, so they sometimes sought to allow themselves more than just worship. For example, many nuns had their own chests, which they hid from others. Because they did not own property, girls and women could borrow jewelry and other valuables from others. Some also managed to have a pet, such as a cat or a dog. It was permissible to leave a nunnery and stop serving, but this was only in extreme cases, and with the permission of a superior. Some nuns chose a completely different solution. For this purpose, they met men in secret, and when the occasion was right, they ran away from the monastery altogether. To avoid attracting attention from others, nuns spoke in whispers or used gestures. Lastly, it was not uncommon for nuns to have relations with members of their own sex. A new law passed at that time forbade same-sex marriages. To avoid suspicion and liability, women slept with a lighted candle and kept their clothes on. Thus, the life of a medieval nun is full of prohibitions and restrictions. Even before entering a new position, many girls and women experienced a number of difficulties, and after the new status, some nuns could not fully adapt to the new conditions. Because of this, various violations regularly occurred. If you like the video, then don't forget to put a like and subscribe to the channel. There will be a lot of interesting, shocking, and exciting things ahead.